you play basketball to try to get to March Madness, and I feel like that's when the atmosphere is at its peak. But you're playing football in the SEC, it's every week, especially playing the biggest stadium in the SEC in Kyle Field. My first start was Florida. It was exactly like I thought it was going to be. First possession, I really couldn't hear. I had to rely on looking at signals to figure out the play. So, yeah, it gets loud and majority of the stadiums in the SEC. The fans are electric. It's a different type of feeling when you're out there. You get that adrenaline rush. It's a great feeling. I'm definitely grateful for it. I had my first start at a stadium that I've always kind of dreamt about playing in, the Swamp. You hear it all the time growing up, watching Tim Tebow and that Florida team. Kyle Field, 112,000 people. You can feel the energy whenever the defense is on the field. We're on the field, obviously, they're not going to be too loud. The defense thrives off that energy that Kyle Field brings. It's something that's not replicated in any other stadium. It's hard to beat.
The Field Talk podcast is presented by Roback. That's RHOBACK. And if you know me, I am almost always rocking Roback, as is the case right now. My favorite, the hoodies. A little chilly up here in Connecticut. No idea why that is the case at this moment, but it's a great day to be sporting a Roback hoodie. If you haven't yet visited Roback, there's gear, as I mentioned, from head to toe. We're talking hats, Q-zips, polos, the hoodies, t-shirts, pants, shorts, joggers, everything in between. You can also use my name, Field, F-I-E-L-D, for 20% off your first order over at roback.com. Perhaps it should have been known that Marcel Reed was destined for football greatness. The son of a coach who grew up around the game, Marcel probably was a pretty decent bet to one day become a college football star. But in sports, nothing is guaranteed, and that is where we have landed today. Is on today's Field Talk podcast, we're going to catch up with Texas A&M quarterback Marcel Reed, who had to be patient during the 2024 season to wait his turn, but took over and helped breathe new life into a Texas A&M program where when the Aggies are doing great, the town is feeling just a little bit different. Looking forward to asking about his football journey to where he is now, as well as his excitement for the upcoming season ahead. Fired up for this one. It's great to be joined by Texas A&M starting quarterback Marcel Reed. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Football is just around the corner. When I say that to you, as the starting quarterback of one of the most prestigious college football programs in the country, what immediately comes to mind for you?
I'm just playing the game that I love. I've been playing since I was a kid, so it's a blessing. Doesn't really mean too much, but yeah, I'm excited I get to play football every day.
All right, so we're about to enter the best time of the year, the fall football season. SEC football means so much more in the biggest, most powerful conference in all of college football, probably all of college sports. But I want to go backwards before we get to where we are right now. You grew up in a football family. Tell me a little bit about that and a little bit about how your personal football journey began.
Yeah. My dad was a coach. He coached at Bethune-Cookman, Tennessee State. He was a defensive coordinator for a couple years, and then became a head coach, I believe, in around 2010, 2011. So yeah, I've grown up as a coach's kid all my life. Went to most of the games growing up until I kind of got to high school. But yeah, I started playing tackle football when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I feel like I've always been good with the ball in my hands. I was just talking to my roommate Dalton. He wore 25 when he was in Pee Wee, and I wore 25 at one point when I was in Pee Wee as well. And I think we both just kind of reflected on who we watched as a kid, and it was Reggie Bush when he was with the Saints. And so, I was a running back in the day. And I kind of tried to play like Reggie Bush all the time. So, I mean, I guess that might be why I'm, shifty a little bit. But, I tried to make people miss every time I had the ball in my hand. So, yeah.
It's working for you. A lot to respond to there, but I want to start with this. The fact that you were watching Reggie Bush when you were a kid makes me realize how old I am because I was watching Reggie Bush when I was also in college. That's a
Yeah.
different conversation for a different time. All right. So, being the son of a coach, what influence did that have on you? I feel like I'm always talking to coaches now, and a lot of them say, I don't force my kid, or even just parents in general. I don't force my kid to play the sport that I loved growing up. But if they get into it, I'm not going to stop them from pursuing it. Were you one that found football on your own, or did your dad say, "Hey, this is the way that we do it in our family"?
I think my parents put me in kind of all sports when I was younger. Just growing up a coach's kid, I felt like just being around it. I grew a love for it. But my family knows, my dad knows this, that basketball is my first love,
Ooh,
and I feel like I'm pretty confident that I could probably play on any college basketball team right now if I wanted to.
ooh. Are,
But
are we getting recruited during March to go like pick it up for the A&M hoops team?
shoot, if they need me, they need a shooter, you can call me.
You're available. Huh? So like, at what point then did you realize that while basketball might be your first love, football might be the sport that you can really thrive in and have an NFL future in?
Yeah, I think around kind of junior year of high school, I was playing the travel basketball in the Adidas circuit, and I mean, I had all the offers you could ask for in football. I had a couple offers and interest in basketball at the time. But yeah, you started getting recruited a little bit later in basketball. I feel like than football, and I think just being on the team I was on in high school at NBA, and just having the friendships I made over playing summer football with all those guys, and just being in the locker room with all those guys, I felt like the atmosphere was a little bit different in football. You play basketball to try to get to March Madness, and I feel like that's when the atmosphere is at its peak. But you're playing football in the SEC; it's every week. So I think that's really what excited me, just choosing on what I wanted to do. Um, and especially playing the biggest stadium in the SEC in Kyle Field. There's nothing like it, and you can't get away from it. So, I just decided I wanted to be a quarterback because I love football, just as much. But basketball is my favorite, but I love football just as much. And yeah, like I said, the atmosphere in college football every Saturday. You get up in the morning and watch College Game Day and see all the game lists going throughout that weekend. There's nothing like it. You gotta be in it. So yeah.
I got goosebumps hearing that answer from you, by the way, because football is just around the corner. We're so pumped to have our Saturdays exist exactly how they should. All right, so you mentioned you eventually chose quarterback. How did that part come to be? You began as a running back, and I'm going to go out on the limb, given your current athletic ability and the fact that you maybe could be playing college basketball as well. I'm going to imagine that you were probably running around through over you name it, every defensive player that you face as a running back. How did you eventually move over to quarterback?
Yeah. I felt like I was always the best passer on the team. Uh, I've been throwing the tight spiral since I was a kid. Being a son, I was always out there warming up with some of his quarterbacks, just throwing the ball, and I felt like uh, I got a pretty good feel for throwing a college football at a young age. Also, just if you ask my dad, I was about I think 6 years old. I had fractured my growth plate in my ankle. I'm wearing a boot. We're in Colorado Springs, and I'm catching punts for his punter. So I felt like, I was pretty, adapted to the football life. Catching a punt with 4 or 5 seconds of hang time as a 6-year old is not easy to do, but I was doing it. And then I feel like when I got to about seventh grade, eighth grade is when I actually started playing quarterback full time, and I was pretty good at it. So, going into my ninth grade year, I was probably like third or fourth string, and I worked my way up to starting quarterback by the fourth game of the season, and ended up going to the state championship. So, kind of escalated from there and never stopped.
How does that happen? You go from, before the season begins, further down the depth chart, and then not that far into the season you're starting. Was it injuries? Was it poor performance? Was it you were just balling out in practice? How did that come to be?
Yeah, I don't think anybody really got injured that year. I think it was just, I was doing everything that I could to work my way up. I never really knew where I would be, but I knew that I was going to work hard regardless of where I was on the depth chart. And it was the same story kind of last year for me. You never know where you are, but I always know I'm going to be ready whenever my name's called. So, that's what it was, and I never took a step back from that point on.
I do want to ask you about that 2024 season in just a little bit, but just sort of sticking with your high school ventures. So you become a starting quarterback. It's during your freshman year. At what point did you realize that you're not just good for, Pee Wee football, you're not just good for middle or high school football, but you're good enough to be on the radar of some of the biggest programs in the country? And do you recall like getting your first recruiting letter or maybe your first call from a coach that you were like, whoa, that is whoever it might be on the other side of the line?
Yeah, my first ever offer was an SEC offer from Kentucky.
Mm,
That was after my freshman year of
wow.
high school. My coach called me into his office, and I thought I was in trouble, but I wasn't. I came down there, talked to, um, shoot, I can't remember who it was exactly, but yeah, talked to him, and kind of just left after having a decent conversation. Didn't get the offer at that point, but I had a decent conversation. I left the room, and as I'm walking back to my class, my coach called my name again. So I came back down, and the coach said he was going to offer me a scholarship, and that was just like it was a good feeling, for sure. And then, not too long after that, I picked up my second offer from Louisville, their rival, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, I picked that first offer was when I was 14 years old, and after that, they kind of kept rolling in after sophomore season.
Were you a little bit dispirited by the fact that Bethune Cookman didn't offer you when you were like 7 years old? They had to at least be thinking about it, right?
Nah, I asked my dad. I told him I wasn't going to play for him.
Oh man, that would have been a great story, but it probably sometimes good to have like a little bit of separation between business and personal, right? So you said these offers start to pile up. I'm sure by the time you're entering the peak of your recruiting season, pretty much every SEC school and every major program has probably made some level of contact with you. How do you actually choose though, and end up at Texas A&M? Like, walk me through that process because I see all these schools and I can't imagine being offered by any of them, which clearly I wasn't nearly good enough at football for that to happen. But being offered by a lot of the major programs, how do you sift through the various options that you have in place?
Um, yeah, my recruiting process was kind of crazy. I was committed to Ole Miss for about a year, and then at that point, towards signing day, kind of just got to change of heart a little bit. Texas A&M at one point had to commit Eli Holstein, so they're kind of out of the picture. And Auburn was always a dream school of mine growing up. When Hugh Freeze got the job, he called me, and I went on an official visit to Auburn, and then didn't end up getting the offer for some reason. But yeah, didn't end up getting the offer, and then I went on a visit to A&M, and it was just different. I mean, all the people you see on the team now, the big names you hear on the team for A&M, I feel like they were all in the 2023 recruiting class, and we just clicked instantly. On that visit, it's like I had real brothers. First day I met them, and my family on my dad's side, majority of my family's from Texas, and you know how big Texas football is, so it just felt like second home to me, and that I should be here playing football.
Kyle Field is 112,000. Is that the number? Is that what it is?
Around there, yeah.
Right around there. Like that's bigger than like a bunch of cities in America. What is so? Did you go to a game during your recruiting visit to A&M?
Yeah, I went to LSU game where they
That's
won.
got to be hard. I mean, it's got to be hard not to commit on the spot when you go through that experience. So let me ask this question because I want to hear about what it's like to actually play on it. But at that point, what's going through your mind as you're experiencing Kyle Field for the first time, not even as a player, but just as a recruit on the sideline, trying to take it all in and process that like this is like 20 towns worth of people or 10 towns worth of people crammed into one stadium.
Yeah, perspective for sure is crazy. As a recruit, being down on the field watching warm ups is a little bit different than actually being down there and warming up for a game, getting ready to play. You're sitting back there watching other people warm up. You see how big, players are in the SEC, and then you see how ginormous the stadium is, how many people are already in there while it's warm up time. I mean, it's just a crazy feeling, and it's a crazy sight for sure. Yeah, but no, being a recruit, especially at an LSU game, a big rivalry game like that, it was good to be at, and it was great to watch them win that game too. People rushed the field that game, and that's also a great experience, just to be a recruit and kind of get down there, celebrate with the players you don't even know yet. But yeah, it's definitely a different perspective being in those shoes rather than being a football player on the field.
All right, so I don't want to skip through too many pivotal moments, but in 2024, this past season, of course, you begin the season. And, you're not playing prominently, but then things changed during the middle of last year. Talk me through that 2024 season and what it was like to kind of step into this starting role and then make a real impact on this program and set the stage for what is now just around the corner for the 2025 season.
I feel like last year, anybody could have played quarterback. Like I said, I was prepared when my name was called, and we all kind of prepared uh, well enough to be out there on a Saturday and play. And we had great quarterbacks all around. And kind of just a coach's decision at the end of the day. And like I said, when my name's called, I'm ready to go. And I got in that game, and did what I was coached to do. And it worked out pretty well for the team. And then after that, just kind of continued to do the same thing. Kept the same kind of preparation. Didn't really change anything that I was already doing. And it worked out for us in some games. It didn't work out for us in others. But you live and you learn. And we're excited for this season. Now that we have a full year of this offense under us, some new weapons uh, outside, and then a full experience O line and running back group. Yeah, we're really excited for what's about to come this year, and we're going to be an explosive offense.
For much of your life, I'm sure you are accustomed to the pressure of not just being the starting quarterback, but also being the starting quarterback and everybody knows it, right? Was last year different at all when you can kind of be the second man in? Was there less pressure on you? Did you feel like you could play with a little bit less weight on your shoulder because how the season had gone up to the point in which you took over in a full-time capacity? Or did it feel kind of like it has throughout most of your experiences in your life?
I'd say it felt like the same. For myself, I don't really feel pressure from others. I'm not a nervous guy when it comes to playing football or any other sport besides track. If I, if I was getting ready for a track meet, I would have bubble guts before the gun went off. But any other sport, I don't really get nervous for. I just go out there and try to have fun. And like I said, do what I'm coached to do. Yeah, I don't let other people, put pressure on me because I know what I'm capable of. If anybody's going to put pressure on me, it's going to be myself. And that's just because I have high expectations for myself. But yeah, I didn't go in there thinking that pressure was going to be off just because I came in as a second string. When you're in, you're the quarterback of the team. You're a quarterback in the SEC. The expectation should be high because all games are big games. So yeah, no, I went in there just kind of expecting to do what I've always done and just play ball.
I don't know if classes have started up yet at the time that you and I are having this conversation, but does it feel a little bit different around campus when you're walking around as the guy that, in a basically like a small city in terms of population of student body? Does it feel a little bit different this year? Could maybe getting a few more eyeballs on you compared to where things were at this time last season?
Uh, Shoot, I'd say maybe a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I had a couple eyeballs, but I feel like the students here are pretty respectful, especially in the school environment. They don't ask for too much. Somebody picture, I might say yes, just if I feel like it. But if I'm not, I'll tell them that I'm not taking pictures today. Just to be real with them. But yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of the students here are pretty calm and pretty nice. I know a couple of like non-athletes around campus just from talking to them in class and stuff like that. So pretty friendly people. But yeah, you definitely get eyeballs. It's hard not to when you're on a football team at an SEC school, especially as big as Texas A&M. But yeah, like I said, they're pretty normal people, and it's not anything crazy.
All right, so there's the old saying in the SEC, it just means more. The SEC is new to Texas A&M for the relatively new, and obviously new to you, just being a couple of years into college. But how would you describe how it actually means more, especially to somebody like me who has lived most of my life in the Northeast, where major college football isn't at the same level as down south?
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of said it. There's besides the school aspect and the students, there's more eyes. I feel like on the SEC than really any other conference, and that's why a lot of people coming out of high school in the recruiting process want to come play in the SEC. I don't know if y'all heard, but like Jaden Ott, new running back at Oklahoma, he just talked about how the difference between Oklahoma and Cal is you know the people kind of care more. It's just and it's not kind of a bash on any other conference or any other school. But you can just see the difference on how people prepare and people work kind of in the SEC because they know they have a real shot of making it to their dreams and aspirations of playing in the NFL. And they're scouts all the time at practice, stuff like that. So yeah, obviously the saying is true. It just means more, and that's why people want to come here and play SEC.
Yeah, it's almost like another professional league, right? The SEC feels almost like the NFL's minor league system with the amount of talent that will one day play on NFL fields. All right, so I was asking you earlier about playing at Kyle Field, 112 or so thousand people watching you, or asking you about the experience as a recruit visiting. Now, if you can, take me back to what it was like during your first start or first meaningful appearances as a player on the field. What would that energy be like? How would you describe it to those that haven't ever and will never be able to experience it?
Yeah, my first start was Florida, and it was exactly like I thought it was going to be. First possession, I really couldn't hear the thing. I had to rely on looking at signals to figure out the play. So yeah, it gets loud in majority of the stadiums in the SEC. The fans are electric, and it's a different type of feeling when you're out there. You get that adrenaline rush, um, but it's a great feeling. I'm definitely grateful for it. Being able to play at a stadium, have my first start at a stadium that I've always kind of dreamt about playing in, the Swamp. You hear it all the time growing up, watching Tim Tebow and that Florida team. You saw them play, but yeah, it's different. It's different. Kyle Field being 110, 112,000 people, you can feel the energy whenever the defense is on the field. We're on the field. Obviously, they're not going to be too loud because they don't want to distract us. But when the defense on the field, the defense kind of thrives off that energy that Kyle Field brings to the field, and it's something that's not replicated in any other stadium, and it's hard to beat.
You haven't visited them all, I don't think yet, at least not as a starter. But in terms of some of the places that you've played at that aren't Kyle Field, is there any atmosphere? Maybe it's a swamp, maybe it's elsewhere that you'll forever remember when you're a grandfather and you're talking to your grandkids about what it was like back in the day. That's just a little bit different than the others that you have been to.
Yeah, I'd say Auburn. That was a really big, kind of big game. Towards the end of the game, it was a four overtime game. The reason I say that is because I feel like I've been on really both sides of it. I went to, uh, I was at the Iron Bowl game where it went four overtimes. I'm pretty sure when John Mechie caught the touchdown in the end zone in the
Yeah.
game. And as a recruit, everybody thought Auburn was going to win in the fourth quarter, so they kind of let the recruits uh, get out of the stands, and we're kind of just in the back of the end zone, ready to rush the field before everybody else does. And the game kind of took a turn. But yeah, I mean, just being in that environment as a recruit and hearing it all um, in such a big game, and then being an athlete playing in that type of environment with the same kind of situation going on, it was a little bit of deja vu. Um, but yeah, it was a different kind of atmosphere for sure, and obviously them rushing the field after doesn't feel great, in the moment, but when you look back at it, it's like wow, like it's real, like this stuff really happens, and like I was in it twice this season, Auburn and South Carolina, and the things that happen on a field rush is kind of crazy, but yeah, it was crazy to experience that for sure.
That's that Auburn Alabama game that you're referencing as one of those where you can just remember exactly where you were when you were watching it, whether you were rooting for Auburn, Alabama, or neither. It was certainly one
Yeah.
of the crazier games. as a competitor and as a highly, highly talented athlete, I'm sure there was a part of you that last season, beginning at spending more time on the sidelines than on the field, was humbling. But were there any lessons that you learned throughout that time that maybe have contributed to growth and made you an even better football player or leader going into this season?
Yeah, I feel like being on the sidelines, especially when you're in a position where you know any play you could go in, you got to be watching at all times. And I felt like just being out there, seeing each and every play, um, I was able to help other people. Just things that they may not have caught, things that coach may have seen from the box, but the quarterback perspective behind the O line couldn't have seen. I was able to kind of give feedback whenever Connor came off the field or whenever a receiver came off the field. Like you see that rotation, they're about to bring Cat or something like that. Like you got to let us know, or like if we don't see it, you got to speak up a little bit. Just kind of communication wise, telling the receiver if you get a call, if you get a check, make sure you echo it to the receiver next to you just in case he may not have saw it, so everybody's on the same page, stuff like that. um, it kind of just opened up my eyes, just seeing it from a different point of view. It was definitely good for myself and just my experience before going into the game.
How would you describe your excitement for this year? Obviously, plenty of expectations surrounding your program. You've got some massive, massive games. Of course, every game matters. UTSA and Utah State to start the season, and then a trip to South Bend, play against Notre Dame, plus an SEC schedule. There's going to be no shortage of huge Saturdays for A&M. But how would you describe your excitement before the season begins?
Yeah, I'm really excited. Like I said earlier, just being in the offense for a year now, and having a lot of guys with experience, we're all comfortable in it, and there's continuity with each other and Coach Klein as well. Really pumped and excited for what this offense has to bring this year. Um, and then just on the flip side of playing at different places, I love playing away games. I love dressing in white. I love playing in you know environments. Just being able to go to places I've never been before and play on a field I've never played on before is just a different type of feeling that I'm going to be excited about whenever that time comes.
Yeah, is there a field that you haven't yet played on that you're saying to yourself, that one will be a little extra special this year?
Yeah, I don't think I've played at all the fields that we're going to play at this year.
Well, yeah.
I've been to Arkansas. Never been to Missouri. I've never been to South Bend, Indiana. So excited to play. Mainly Notre Dame week 3, just to kind of get a get back for sure.
Yeah,
But yeah, just play at Notre Dame, Texas, Missouri. All those places are just going to be really exciting to step on the field for the first time.
yeah, some very, very special atmospheres to be clear with which each of those, and frankly, every Saturday in football, in college football, is hallowed ground as far as probably all of us are concerned. To kind of wrap things up here, as you think about your football journey from coach's son to player to coveted running back and then eventually quarterback recruit and basketball recruit to here you are now A&M starting quarterback with all the twists and turns along the way, how would you sum it up? And if you had sort of shared to whether it's A&M fans or young quarterbacks out there, some of the most important lessons that you have learned, what might be an example of one or a couple that come to mind?
Yeah. I mean, always shout out to 12th Man. We love you. They do so much for us, and just even outside of football, they're so supportive, and we appreciate them a lot. Just to any football players or any kids, just go out there and have fun. Don't ever try to overthink anything. And like I said, always be prepared. Because the only thing that's going to stop you from going 100% is not knowing what you're doing. So always know what you're doing so you can go 100%. Because if you go 100%, you'll never regret anything that you're doing on the field at any time. But yeah, that's just my message for them. And then yeah, have fun.
Marcel Reed, you've got a great head on your shoulders, and I can't wait to watch you and your shoulder go to work this upcoming year for Texas A&M. We really appreciate you joining us here in the Field Talk podcast. Good luck this season. Can't wait to watch.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Really, really appreciated talking to Marcel Reed today, who just seems to have a quiet confidence about him, a player that seems very much ready for the responsibility that is on his shoulders right now as the starting quarterback for not just a college football team, not just an SEC football team, but a program in Texas A&M that dictates the pulse of the city about as much as really any school in the college football landscape. When times are good down there in College Station, it's often because the football team is doing great. It's cool to hear about how his father's influence impacted his football journey, and I can't wait to watch him this upcoming fall on Saturdays and see what his football future holds. I suspect it will soon be in the NFL on Sundays. A reminder that the Field Talk podcast is presented by Roback, the best fit, the best feel. Head on over to roback.com and enter the promo code FIELD, FIELD, for 20% off your first order. And finally, thank you to everybody that has been checking out the show, whether it's on podcast or here on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, use that subscribe button, hit that subscribe button, give us a rating, comment, you name it, any way to let us know how you're feeling about the show. Same goes for those of you that are listening in audio form over on the podcast fronts. Until next time, we'll talk to you all soon.